Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel yet again. So today I'm actually doing something a little bit different. So I actually stumbled across this article on, I don't know if you, I mean I'm sure everyone on YouTube has heard of Brightside, but if you haven't, it's this really like weird commercial YouTube channel. Like, it's basically a business YouTube channel, and it usually is paired with really clickbaity titles, like 9 psychological questions that will help you read anyone. Okay, and they have all these titles. Now, the content in general isn't really, it's not the best, okay? But I actually did run across the article, 9 psychological questions that will help you read anyone. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to go over their questions and kind of talk about them. So, let's get into it. Now, the first question is, would you open an envelope that has the date of your death inside? Now, personally, I think this one's a no-brainer. I think, obviously. Because if there is an envelope that does have the date of your death inside, okay, why would you not open it? It's going to give you so much more ability to plan. Plus the fact that you could arguably become one of the most famous people in the world overnight by, you know, marketing that. But you would be able to plan for your death, and if it was possible, you could potentially change it. Now, from the way they phrase the question, I don't think it would be possible to change that date and time when you die, because it says, would you open an envelope that has the date of your death? It doesn't say the potential date of your death, it just says the date of your death. I mean, it means you're pretty much going to die then. So, if we're assuming that that's what the question means, then I do think it would be extraordinarily useful, because then you could try and set your goals to achieve them all before that certain point in time, and it would honestly be extremely motivating, unless it was like tomorrow, but it would be extremely motivating to be able to gauge how long you had, so you would know you don't just have an infinite amount of time. Because, I mean, everyone knows death is going to come eventually, but if you think about it, we don't quite register that. But if we had a literal envelope that told us when, I think that would really help people, you know. It might shock them out of inactivity. It would really get them to start working, you know, and accomplishing things. Now, the second question is, would you be friends with yourself? So, probably. I mean, the thing is, yeah, I would probably do that. I mean, it would definitely be weird, because we would both probably know what we were thinking at all times. And that brings into question, you know, the question of free will is, do we have free will? And if not, would we be thinking, you know, the same thing? So with this question, I'm going to assume that my clone, or whatever it would be, would have free will. It would just be pretty much the same as me, because if it didn't have free will, it would basically be like having a shadow puppet, and I mean, you can't even really be friends with a shadow puppet. So yeah, we're gonna assume it has free will. If it does have free will, then I'd say yes, because I'm sure we could accomplish something, you know, work together, set up some schedule so we can get more work done. Because if there's 2 of me, then we each probably have to do half the work as we would normally have to do. Now, that does, once again, though, bring into question, like, can our minds communicate? If I learn something, since it is myself, does the information transfer into my clone's brain, you know? Like, if I learned, let's say, some mathematical equation, if I memorized it, would my clone be able to have it in their memory as well? If so, that would be immeasurably useful. If not, not as much, but it would still work. Because I'm sure we could get what we needed to get done in half the time we wanted, and then we would have extra time to pursue our own interests, which would probably be the same thing. And then if our interests are the same thing, we could just, you know, bounce ideas off each each other, you know? It's basically like having double the talent and double the skill that you would normally have. So I think that would be really useful if I could befriend myself. And I, obviously, since it would be myself, they would think the same thing. Now, if you could see a measuring scale above people's heads, what would you want this to measure? Their status in society, their level of happiness, their wealth, etc. Now, that's a bit of a tough question. However, I would have to say I'd want it to measure, in fact, their probably their hostility. Because if you think about it, that really, a lot of things stem from how hostile someone is towards you. You know if they're gonna pull out a gun and shoot you or not. So if you had that above their heads and it measured like how angry or how bad of intentions they had for you, you would be able to successfully navigate and negotiate out of pretty much any problems that exist. And I mean, if you do see a bar that's super high and you know they're about to shoot you, you can do it first. So it really would help you plan ahead and, understand any relationship with someone. So yeah, I think that would be probably the most useful bar to have above someone's head. Because, I mean, their status in society, seriously, no one cares about that. That doesn't matter at all. Their level of happiness kind of matters, kind of similar, but I think the hostility one would be better. Especially because I'm pretty decent at judging a person's current level of happiness. So I think hostility, to know the exact number, would be just unfathomably important. Now, what do you do differently from other people? On this one, I honestly don't know. The thing is, to say that, it assumes that it's kind of like categorizing other people. It's saying, I'm different than everyone else. And I mean, that's just incorrect. You're not. You're not different from everyone else. So, I don't really know how to answer that question because, it's like, oh, well, I draw. Well, everyone else draws. Oh, well, I like this. Well, I'm sure there are other people out there that like the same thing. So I don't really think that's a good question at all. I think that's complete trash. But moving on. Do you ever get the feeling that the current day has been repeated 100 times? No. No, that's weird. Mainly because I don't remember any of the days I don't pay attention to. I mean, if a day is boring, and I hate to use that word, but if it is, then I'm just not going to remember it, probably. Okay, next. If women and men lived on 2 different planets, what would happen to both of these planets? Well, first of all, they would die out in roughly 100 years. I mean, realistically speaking, okay, let's say you divided it right now, in about 100 years or so, give or take, like 10, 20 years, everyone would die out. There would be no more human race. It would be all gone. Aside from that, though, it would probably take on the different qualities of the different genders, The society would become more similar to both of those genders. Aside from, the death, the inevitable end of humanity. If you commit a crime to feed your hungry child, are you a bad person or did you commit the crime out of necessity? Okay, so it's wrong because here's the deal. Okay, if you draw the line there, I committed a crime to feed my hungry child. Well, here's the deal. I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that because if you are in that situation, you're obviously going to do that. Though it is still morally wrong because you're depriving someone else of their property. Now, this is once again assuming, though, that you would ever need to do this, okay? Because, let's say in a free market society, I highly doubt you're ever going to need to do this, at least in this state of time. At least in this time, probably not. Because, the economy has improved tremendously. You know, back in the day, okay, if we want to talk about this, back in the day, a poor person could have owned like a cloak, a traveling cloak, one pair of clothes, and maybe like a dagger or something, okay? Back in the medieval times. Now, a poor person owns TV and internet connection, blah, blah, blah. You get the point, though. They are a lot more well off than anyone back in the day. Also, there are charitable organizations that would probably help you feed your child. So, first of all, you would obviously have to try your hardest to feed them legally. And I mean, that's very, very possible that you would never run into this situation if you actually tried. Because, I mean, even if you just go out on the street and say, my kid is really hungry, can you give me $10? Even begging, okay, you could make enough money to feed your kids. So, I think that question really relies on the situation of the person and everything, and if they've actually tried to solve their negative situation before committing the crime. Because it's like, the question is, if you commit a crime to feed your hungry child, are you a bad person, or did you commit the crime out of necessity? Well, the thing is, a crime out of necessity doesn't necessarily mean it's okay. Here's the deal, okay? Let's say someone steals from another person, right? That's a crime out of necessity, okay? Let's say they steal from another person because they're hungry and they need to eat. Well, let's say the person they stole from was hungry, and because the other person stole that food, they now starve to death, right? So you were doing it morally right for yourself, but for the other person, you completely ended their life, right? So you can never guarantee that a crime quote unquote out of necessity is going to be positive for you and not have a negative effect on anyone else, because it always will have a negative effect. Next question. If happiness was money, what would your job be? I have no idea what that means. What does that mean? I don't even know how. That's a weird phrase. Does it mean if happiness? Okay. Does it mean if like money, was a requirement for happiness, what would your job be? Well, I mean, then obviously you would get the job that made the most money possible because you want to be happy. I don't really understand that question. So anyways, those are all the questions for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this type of video because it's a bit different than my normal videos, but I will talk to you in the next video. Also, if you're still watching, please do let me know in the comments what other things and topics you want to see me cover, because if you do, if you let me know, I'll be sure to cover it and I'll put your name in the next video. I will shout you out in the next video. So yeah, I will see you in the next video.